What's better than earning money from a 9-to-5 job? It's earning money while you sleep, which is made possible if you start investing. You're listening to the Real Estate Investing Demystified with your very own dynamic duo, Ava Benisaki and August Biniaz. Tune in as we discuss everything real estate, both on the passive and active sides. We feature life-changing stories of today's real estate leaders that will help build your own roadmap to success. This is a show that will lead you to a diversified portfolio, a much bigger revenue, and a next-level venture that brings you a smooth cash flow. Let's get this episode started.
Everyone's saying, oh my God, the worst thing to invest in is real estate. And I'm a data scientist. I'm a math guy. I'm a numbers guy. And I'm looking at the numbers and I'm saying, but these numbers look so much better than they did 2 years ago. How could you possibly say it's the worst time to invest? It seems like all the time that you guys were investing the last 3 or 4 years, those were bad times. This now seems like a good time. But nobody wanted to listen to me. My family threatened to basically stop talking to me if I invested in real estate. We grew up, in a lower middle class neighborhood in India, in Mumbai. And I remember that we would get chicken once a week. And so that was like the highlight of our dinner table, the day that we had chicken, because the rest of the time you were just basically eating staple foods. And I think that everyone should have some phase of their life where there's financial stress or, you don't know what the future looks like, because I think that it truly builds character in a way that's almost impossible. My kids are good kids. They have good hearts. But they have grown up as princes. They have grown up in a huge house with, and they've never, had a need for anything. And I feel like you get a warped sense of the world when that happens, and there's really no way to avoid that. So, so I love the fact that the kitchen table for at least 5 or 6 years when I was growing up was bare. I had I had a brother and a sister, and they were twins. They were younger than me. So my dad died when they were 6, I think. They were like 5. And so I was also dad for them, right? So I was elder brother. I was 6 years older. So I was their dad figure growing up. So I had to be very careful around the dinner table on what to say and what not to say. No, actually, it was the exact other way. My mom always said, Neal, you're really set up to be an officer kind. You go to work, you come back, you watch TV, you go to sleep. You're not really set up to be the entrepreneurial kind. You're not set up to open your own business. And sadly enough, I think I believed her. And I think that what I realized today, that I've always had very strong entrepreneurial ability. So this is one where you kind of take the wrong thing from your parents' beliefs. And so I finished, my computer science degree, went to work for a huge company with 27,000 employees, and for basically wasted 6 years of my life working for them, going to work, coming back at 5 o'clock and watching TV, and then going to sleep. And so, right around the 6-year mark, I just felt burned out. I felt like there was something wrong with my life and I needed to take more risks. And so I went to my uncle who was moving to the US, and I said, I'd like to go to the US. I've always loved the US. And I know that people like me with the kind of skills that I have are very much in demand. This was the late 90s, right? So this place was blowing up. Silicon Valley, they were desperate for, engineers. And so he was like, yeah, but you're usually the laid back kind. Do you want to get into something that's going to be really problematic? You understand that, it's a big fight. You don't just go there and get the red carpet rolled out. And it didn't happen. I mean, it was the first year here was a real struggle, despite the fact that I had the right degree and the right experience. And so, my first car in the US was $450. And I'm proud to say that I sold it 9 months later at $550. So I made $100 on that car. And so it was very tough. I mean, I slept on hand-me-down mattresses, and I slept in the garage of my aunt's home in Fremont, California. So I did that piece, and I realized as I went through that piece, that wasn't very hard for me. I mean, you kind of going through it, roughing it out, it was okay, no big deal. And so I realized that I had to do more entrepreneurial stuff. But then I got derailed again when a company made me an offer. I accepted their offer, and 2 years later, I was the VP of the company. And then I got the chance to basically be what is known as an intrapreneur. An entrepreneur opens companies, kind of launches companies and works on them. An intrapreneur does the same thing inside of a company.
Mm-hmm.
So the CEO of the company, his name's Paul, was a visionary. He's a very, very smart guy, Iranian guy that had a PhD and a master's degree, I think from 2 different universities here, like genius level smart. I think what he realized was that I was the kind of guy that loved launching companies, but I wasn't really truly comfortable with going out there and doing it myself. I'd like to do it under an umbrella.
Mm-hmm.
So he allowed me to basically take crazy ideas that I had and make those ideas come to life. And we launched 4 companies. 3 of them succeeded. One of them
Wow.
never grew beyond $100,000 a month in revenue. So we eventually shut it down after trying for 3 years, even though it was profitable. It was just too distracting, compared to the other businesses. And so we went from, and it was predominantly in the education arena, so technology education. So we kind of created all these companies and then sold them together as one package deal on one day in 2013.
Oh, wow.
So from 1992 to 1999 to 2013, we were building these companies together as 2 partners. I was the junior partner, he was the senior partner. So it was really nice to be able to be an entrepreneur and still be inside a company, still have a salary and still know that was there. So in hindsight, Matt, I feel like it was bad for me. But while I was going through it, it still felt good to create these new companies and still basically have the confidence that, I had a W-2 salary. I just feel like I didn't stretch far enough because of that. There was just a comfort zone. 2013 was when we sold that company. And I'd been doing real estate for a while before that.
Okay.
I got into real estate in reverse. We decided to build our own campus instead of renting from other people. And so the CEO basically threw me straight into the water there, saying, you helped me build it. And he knew a lot. I mean, he knew a lot more than I did about building and constructing these things. And so obviously the mentorship was phenomenal. But I had to learn an incredible amount about real estate when building a campus from scratch. So, I mean, most people start with a minor rehab of a room. I started with a $6 million campus that had to be ready on July 4th, 2004.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we had a $10,000 a day penalty to our landlord, General Motors. Was ready.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of, sleeping bags going on, basically sleeping there so that we could get things done faster just to build it. And then I caught the real estate bug, and I started basically investing in real estate using technology. So that's what I'm known for. I'm known as the Mad Scientist, and my brand is basically the use of technology in different aspects of real estate and using that to 10x our business. I'll start with an anecdote of how I did it, and then I'll talk about how I use it today, right?
Okay.
So it's 2009. I'm making a lot of money from my tech company, but the real estate world is falling apart. Everyone's saying, "Oh my God, the worst thing to invest in is real estate." And I'm a data scientist. I'm a math guy. I'm a numbers guy. And I'm looking at the numbers and I'm saying, but these numbers look so much better than they did 2 years ago. How could you possibly say it's the worst time to invest? It seems like all the time that you guys were investing the last 3 or 4 years, those were bad times. This now seems like a good time. But nobody wanted to listen to me. My family threatened to basically stop talking to me if I invested in real estate. And I just didn't listen to anybody. So I said, you know what? I'm going to prove you guys wrong. The math is completely against you. Instead of buying 1 rental home, I'm going to buy 10. I'm going to buy 10 rental homes, and I'm going to buy them in the same place. But I'm going to use mathematics, and I'm going to show you how I'm going to use math. And so it became like a stubborn thing for me, where I was basically up against my family, who was just saying, no, don't invest in real estate. And I have a clan, not a family, like 42 people. Right? So what I do is I go to this guy, Ukrainian hacker, and I basically say, could you please spider the Zillow website for me? So the next day he comes back with the whole website. I'm glad that the FBI was knocking down at my door. So he comes back with the whole website in an Excel spreadsheet, and I sort it and I say, what cities in the US dropped the most from peak to trough, right? So 2005 peak, 2009 trough. And it turns out it's a Californian city. Yay. So I get in my car the next day and I drive 144 miles to Madera, which is near Fresno. And I basically drive into the city and I realize why the cities dropped the most. Kaufman and Broad, which is one of the biggest builders in the US, built an entire brand new section of the city. And they basically had all these farm workers using undocumented income buy all these properties. By 2009, all the farm workers had left.
Yeah.
So the entire section of the city was empty. And so I go to a builder and I say, how much are these worth? He says, well, they're selling for 90,000, but the new cost of construction is 180 to 200K. So I said, so if I wanted to build one today, it would cost me 200K? He said, yes. So I said, but they're brand new. Nobody's ever lived in them. They're $90,000. He said, yeah, there's only one problem, Neil, and you have to solve that problem. There are no renters here at this point of time. All the renters are 22 miles away in Fresno. And I'm like, so if I could figure out how to get renters here, I would be making a lot of money. You'd be like, yeah, you just buy as many as you could, right? So I went to a bank and I put 10 of them under contract. And I said, I need more than 30 days. I need more time. But banks those days, they were like, they wanted anybody and anybody to take this stuff off their hands. So I put 10 of these under contract for under $1 million. And I go off to Fresno the next day. I want to buy an older property in Fresno. I don't want to buy a bigger property. I don't want to buy one that you built in 2006. I want something that's like 20 years old and is smaller, maybe 3 bedrooms. So he finds me a property on Summerfield Drive. We go basically put that property in escrow. And then I go back to my Ukrainian hacker and I say, I want you to look at every rental listing website in the US. Figure out how to hack him. So instead of one listing, you get 50 or 100 listings. And bombard me with an absolute avalanche, a mountain of leads about this one property in Fresno.
Yeah.
So it's like, I don't know what the heck you're doing, but hey, I'm getting paid, so I'm going to shut up and do it, right? So within 3 or 4 days, I start getting an absolute, all I've sent him are pictures and descriptions of this one Fresno property. I'm getting an absolute bombardment of leads. So what I do is basically, I hire a person in the Philippines. And I have her process these leads. And one of the things that we start telling people is that, that property we think is gone. We think there's a lot of interest in it, but there's these other properties. They're 22 miles away. They're brand new. Here's a bunch of pictures and a bunch of videos. So I paid $500 to a videographer to take these exquisite pictures, the ones that are super saturated, look phenomenal. And we're sending them videos of property after property after property. And people are like, no, this is bullshit. I don't want to go to Madera. I live in Fresno. But if you get a mountain of leads, only one person has to agree to check a property out of every 100 leads. So in 30 days, we must have processed like 3,000 or 4,000 leads.
Wow.
And we had to do it very quickly because you can't keep the properties in contract forever.
Yeah.
You have to pay for them, right?
Right.
So there's a point at which your money is going to go hard. Your deposit is going to go hard. So we had to figure out how to fill them. But I think 35 days later, I had $11,000 in cash flow. And so that was the first use of technology. And then the use of technology to basically hack all of these sites on the internet to get 10x the lead flow.
Yeah.
And then the third one is the use of outsourcing to process those leads to get these people in. And it worked, right? So I became addicted, not to real estate, but Matt, I became addicted to hacking real estate with technology. And so the rest of my career has been a long string of those sorts of things. But this is how it all started, and I really didn't use these exact things again, so I can tell you what I did next. But that was it. There was this addiction, this high of saying I use tech to do things that 10x'd my revenue, my potential benefit. Just so you know, I own all of those properties now, and the revenue from them is absolutely phenomenal because I've only got like $50,000 left on all of these properties in terms of my principal, but they're all worth $300,000 each, right? And it changed my life. Even though my big fat tech salary was still bigger, all of a sudden I felt free. There's always this fear with tech people that, your boss is going to realize that he can hire 3 young guns, for the same price that he's paying you and get rid of you and hire those 3 guys. My boss wasn't like that. He was great, but you always have the fear in the back of your mind, right? Yeah. So you're just killing yourself with the tech job. And when this happened, I stopped killing myself. I started saying, if he fires me, you know what? My lifestyle is paid for, right? I'm not making as much money, but it's no big deal, right? Life will go on. Yeah. So, real estate really saved my soul. So I did duplexes, I did quadplexes, I did collections of triplexes. So it was a gradual process, but what really happened was not buying properties. What really happened was me starting to say, what else can I hack or change or use technology in? So it was really a jihad. It was a crusade, and it had nothing to do with buying properties. It was just all about, it seems like this real estate people, they're different from us geeks. in that they don't think like us, they don't behave like us. So maybe there's an angle here that I can use, and then I can publish it on the web and tell people about it, right? So there was this great, like everything had to be published on the web. So what I started doing was, so I went to another guy and I said, I want to spider the Census Bureau website, the BLS website. I want to spider Zillow and Trulia and all these other websites. And I want to build a big database because I'm going to try and figure out the answer to the question, what are the best cities in America to invest in, and what are the best neighborhoods in those cities? So that question became an absolute fanatic obsession for me, right? So I was like, I have to be able to answer this in a quantitative way. And then within that quantitative way, I have to be able to answer it in a qualitative way, right? Those are the two things that geeks like us care about. We want quantitative analysis, but then we want qualitative analysis. So what we did was we built this database and we stuck it into this statistical software called R, right? The software is actually just called R.
Yep.
We stuck it in there and we started to throw lots of different parameters in there to see what really affected real estate investors' profit. What are the things that if we throw into our analysis immediately point to this city? Because we know this city is doing really, really well and people are making huge amounts of profit. So if you keep throwing those factors in, does it point directly to that city? So that's what we did. And I'm trying to kind of dumb it down here because it was a very, complicated algorithm. But in the end, here's the answer to all this skullduggery, was that 5 things made the big difference. Cities that had these 5 things going for them, everybody made money. Even the ones that were buying foolishly made money, simply because there was a huge upward momentum. All ships rose all the time, right? So it was population growth, job growth, income growth, home price growth, and crime reduction. Immediately, the moment I say this, people are like, no, but you didn't look at schools. You didn't look at poverty levels. And the answer is, I did. I stuck in the schools and ended up with the same exact list of cities. So when I took the schools out, because the list was the same and I wanted the simplest possible system, I didn't do schools. You want to add schools, go at it. I mean, I'm sure there's a benefit. My focus was, what is the smallest number of factors that gives me the same list of city as the big list of factors? And so we did that. Then we basically switched to the neighborhoods and we found 5 other factors for neighborhoods, similar factors like poverty level, ethnic mix, right? So neighborhoods with a ethnic mix that was diverse were very easy to rent up, but neighborhoods that had one ethnic mix, like all whites, all blacks, all Latinos, was very difficult because most of your leads got wasted. People would come, show up, waste your time, but then they'd realize everyone living in here is a Latino, and I'm not Latino, I'm Chinese, I'm not going to live here, right? So they would waste a lot of your time. So we found that actually if there was an ethnic mix which had lots of different ethnicities, you had a much higher chance of closing your marketing leads, right, for tenants. Then we put it on our website, and then we realized that very few people were looking at it. I mean, the people that looked at it absolutely adored it. They loved it. They were like, oh my God, this is the best thing ever, because in 10 minutes, I can look at a city that I've never even heard of and tell you things about it that a broker that lives in that city wouldn't be able to tell you, right? It was that powerful. But there were only like 50 people a month taking it. And so we're like, okay, let's send an email to our database. And by now I was pretty famous, kind of a micro famous person in the geek, not the geek vertical, but the real estate geek vertical, right? So people that are, in real estate, but are very geeky and like data. So I was, famous within that vertical, and there were like all these thousands of people that knew me there. So I sent an email out to them and said, so we have this product, you've seen it, it's awesome. How do we have 10 or 50 times the people look at this? And that was actually a great email, because the answer that came back was really straightforward. 3 of the people that sent it back said, you need to look at online education portals, create a video course and stick it there. And so I Google it, and the biggest one is udemy.com, udmy.com. So I'm like, okay, maybe I can get 50 more people a month here. So I spent about 20 days basically creating a video course that's about 3 hours long. And I stick it on udemy.com/real focus. That was the name of the system. And it just exploded. I mean, so if yesterday I was showing somebody how many students I have on that course right now, there are 6,420 people taking the course just yesterday. Right? And there are 600 5-star reviews, which are more reviews than all of the real estate courses on Udemy put together. And the average review is 4.8 out of 5. So it just, went nuts because people realized that this guy is a geek who's not even a real estate guy. He does something in
Mm-hmm.
tech. He has a full-time tech job, but he loves doing all this, skullduggery with numbers, right? This geekery, and then just gives it away. And so people loved that. And it gave me notoriety and gave me that mad scientist tag that I enjoy so much now, right? Because it urges me on to do new experiments. So and what it also gave me is a big database of people. Udemy doesn't give me email addresses of people, but they liked me so much they'd find their way to me,
Mm-hmm.
right? So they'd
Mm-hmm.
find their way to
Right.
multifamilyu.com, to Grow Capitalist. You see that behind me, growcapitalist.com. That's our website. Because by this time I was beginning to transition into real estate. I was like, hey, people like what I'm doing. Why shouldn't I charge for it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So at some point when the company was sold, I took 3 months off, realized that retirement is an absolutely horrible concept when you're 40 years old. You're just going to kill yourself, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I was depressed. And then so it's like, okay, what's next? And it's like, well, this technology real estate thing looks good. Let's try that. And, I've already been doing some of these cool things, so I'm going to do more of it. And it was a very smooth transition because I had a big database, I had a big following. So I transitioned, ended up with over $300 million worth of real estate. There's some student housing in there. We do industrial projects, we do public storage, but the core is multifamily.
Okay. Okay.
So,
Excellent.
so that, I mean, it all seems very planned out. It was horribly disjointed and sort of things just happened. We have 24 employees at last count, maybe 25, and 18 of them are full-time employees that are outsourced. We believe that the perfect company today, 2/3 of the employees are outside the US and 1/3 are in the US.
Mm-hmm.
If you try to cut the US piece anymore, the company loses that flavor because Americans know what Americans want. And they work in every aspect of the company. They're all full-time. They all work 40-hour weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And they all work US time. So they're not allowed to work any time except 8 to 5 US. And so that portion of the business became huge. And then eventually I started writing courses, video courses on how to 10x your business using virtual assistants. And every time I hold that as a webinar, at least 1,000 people show up. These courses are all free. They're on multifamilyu.com. That's multifamily followed by the letter u.com. And we get I'd say about 50,000 people that sign up for our various deep dive webinars. And we do webinars on all kinds of things. We do
Yeah.
town halls on impact of COVID on real estate, impact of COVID on student housing, impact of COVID on industrial, impact of COVID on multifamily, single family, right? I mean, these are very deep dive, and we bring in people that are geeks. And so we're pretty famous for that. That virtual assistant piece, it starts out for the first 20 minutes explaining how to recruit them through a series of, I think, 6 demos. So it goes in, looks at the actual websites, shows you the filters. There's about 12 filters that we use because the overall quality of virtual workers is awful. It's just incredibly bad. And so these 12 filters allow you to get to the top 0.1%. And so you'll actually watch me doing 12 different filters. But then other than that, there's other filters. Even if you have good people, you need interviewing skills. So we show you how we filter people after we like them and say, yep, I want to interview this person. But then we have further filters in place, including disc tests that are free. So we give away, these free disc test links that most people don't know about. And then we go on how do we manage them? Like, what are the best practices of managing virtual assistants? What do our reports look like? So we show live reports. And then we talk about how do we embed them into our life. So I give people examples of how they make my life better, not just my company better. So it's extremely descriptive. I think there's 27 demos. For me, I'm constantly looking at opportunities being created by stress. So one of the key things that people they have a gut feel that they know this, but they don't say it to themselves often enough, is that distress creates more opportunity than boom times. I mean, in my mind, in some ways, this event is more transformative than World War II. Not in all ways, but in some ways, because we have an economy where millions of CEOs had to learn how to work from home, right? work office habits didn't change in World War II because no foreign soldiers stepped on US soil. So as far as our country is concerned, it was not as transformative as Europe, where basically the whole continent was demolished. In the last 4 months, we have taught the most important people that drive our innovation and our businesses forward. These people are key to our future. All of them have been forced to learn how to run businesses from home. And that is an absolutely transformational change. There's no going back from that. And the impact of that is going to be much greater than the healthcare impact of COVID. And I don't want to minimize the healthcare impact of COVID. 130, 160,000 Americans are dead. So it's obviously a huge impact. What I'm trying to say is that if you compare a mountain to Everest, Everest is going to look better. The impact of COVID is much larger in the way that it did two things. Well, three, I should say. Number one, what COVID has done is that it has changed the way we work forever. That is not something that we can go back to. And even if 80% of companies go back to where they were pre-COVID, it will be ridiculously transformational because that means that 20% of companies in the US are working a different way. And that changes things in a way that's so radical that we can't even begin to explain that to people, right? So that was the first impact that it had. The second impact, which is tied to the first one, is that there's going to be a portion of the US workforce that does not need to live in expensive cities anymore. They don't need to fight traffic. They don't need to live in these expensive places. They can go out and choose cities based on their interests. If they're skiers, they'll head to Provo, right? If they'll go to Idaho or Boise if they like, canoeing or things like that. So they're going to be heading out. They're going to go to Montana if they like, the ski slopes. I mean, so there's a lot of these amazing places in the US that people have never lived in because they were nervous that their bosses truly didn't like work from home. But now that companies are making announcements and CEOs are working from home, it becomes much easier to take that step. And that changes the way real estate is done in this country. When I'm in such a transformative time, I'm doing a lot. I mean, I am looking on the one side, creating funds to buy distressed hotels. On the other side, I'm buying industrial because the third and final transformative effect of COVID was this. E-commerce grows 5 times the speed of the US economy. The US economy runs at 2% GDP growth. E-commerce runs at about 10%. So it's already 5x the US economy. It's the fastest vertical in the US economy. In the last 12 months, which included all these COVID months, e-commerce grew at 77%, while the US economy grew at 0. So what has just happened, Matt, is that 7 years of e-commerce growth has come in 4 months, right? And that is also something that we can't step back on. I had used DoorDash 3 times in the 2 years before COVID, all in 3 times when I was in a food desert somewhere checking out a property.
Yeah.
I don't think that changes because now all of my favorite places I've got, DoorDash plugged in. So now it's just pick up iPad, click DoorDash, click repeat, done. It takes roughly 10 seconds to order food now.
Yeah. Yep.
Right? And I'm a technology guy and I wasn't doing it before, right? Imagine how many non-technology portions of the workforce were forced to do these online things. My wife's a school teacher and has now learned Zoom and has now learned Google Classroom, something that you couldn't hold a gun to her head to do. She had no choice. That was the only way to connect to students. So the economy becomes digitalized in a way that is almost radical because it was forced on us. And that third change means that we need more industrial and warehousing in this country, and we need a lot less retail. I'm looking at building industrial warehouses throughout the United States in key markets where freeways intersect. Like Salt Lake City is a place where freeways intersect. And then that whole North Carolina to Georgia, Atlanta area is where freeways intersect because there's going to be just so much shipping, right?
Yeah.
So I've always ordered a truckload of stuff from Amazon. So I've always had trouble with on Thursday morning when the trash guy comes in, my recycle bin is always, full. And so what I've been doing is, and my neighbors know this, on Thursday morning, I wake up early and I go around basically filling up other people's recycle bins. And most of the time, there's a little bit of space in other people's bins. In the last 4 months, I haven't been able to put one box in other people's bins.
Yeah.
I've seen other people roaming around on Thursday mornings trying to find empty bins. Today is a great time because there's stress, there's distress, and most of that distress is ahead of us. I mean, very, very little distress has happened in real estate at this point. I can't even really point to something and say that's distressed. But there it isn't, because it takes time, right?
Mhm.
So the next 12 months are filled with opportunity. Why wouldn't I take advantage of it? You know, whether you're interested in investing in, you know, technology-driven syndications, or you're interested in learning how to do what we do, because we teach boot camps about that, or you're interested in just taking our massive array of free courses, the best place to go to is multifamilyu.com. That's multifamily followed by the letter u.com. The other option is, if you want to listen to about, I've been on about 200 podcasts now, is just to type Neal, Neal Bawa, B-A-W-A, and hit enter on Google. I have the extreme fortune and extreme misfortune of being the only Neal Bawa on the World Wide Web. There's podcasts, there's conferences that I'm presenting at that have published their videos of the conference. And then all kinds of geeky articles from me. So watch out, Geek Alert.
Thank you for joining us for this episode. We hope this conversation enlightened you on how to win big in this highly profitable and risk-averse space. Get on your feet and embrace this world that offers so many opportunities just waiting for you out there. Continue your journey to becoming a savvy real estate expert by subscribing to the show at cpicapital.ca. Don't forget to leave a positive rating and share with your friends. See you on the next one.